Welcome back. I'm Rob Finnerty. So a Hillary Clinton-endorsed candidate for Houston mayor, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, appears to have been caught on a leaked audio recording berating her staff, speaking to them in a hugely unprofessional way. The audio, obtained by a Texas newspaper, is so reprehensible we're not going to play it for you on TV right now. It's way too early in the morning for that. But all you need to know is that there were a lot of F-bombs dropped and probably more hurt feelings around the office there than a season of The Bachelor. And this behavior, treating people like crap, seems to be commonplace for Congresswoman Jackson Lee. In 2011, staffers came forward to the Daily Caller to vent about the disrespect in an article on Congressional Bosses from Hell. And this doesn't just reveal the truth about one congresswoman. It addresses what could be something that's become common among more radical Democrats today. They have very little respect for the law, for law enforcement, family values, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the flag, our national anthem, the innocence of children. That list goes on and on. Joining us now to discuss, someone who knows a thing or two about working for a powerful official with a strong personality, former White House communications director under Donald Trump, Mercedes Schlapp. And for the Democratic point of view this morning, New York Times bestselling author and Dow Jones Market Watch columnist Ellis Henican. It is great to have you both on this morning. Good to see you. Mercedes, we'll begin with you. So Congresswoman Jackson Lee released a comment where she took no responsibility for her actions, but did say, quote, "At heart, I am someone who tells it straight." President Trump, as we know, a straight shooter, not afraid to be direct and tough. But we don't hear stories like this about Donald Trump, even from staffers who've turned on him politically, people who've written books. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we hear about this stuff when it comes to Democrats, particularly in Congress, and not someone like Donald Trump?
Well, first, let's remember that these jobs are incredibly stressful. It doesn't mean you should be polite to your staff and do the best you can to really mentor and help them grow. So it's interesting that her own staffer turned against her. Look, for Donald Trump, I'll tell you something. I remember that it was a lot of us women in the room, Kellyanne Conway, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, where we were very much respected in the process. Donald Trump came to us many of times to ask for our opinions, to ask for our advice as he was making these very critical decisions for our country. And, so I think for us to realize that, I know for Donald Trump, he was really the best boss I've ever worked for. I think for these congressional Democrats, like a Sheila Jackson Lee, God only knows she said some crazy stuff in her lifetime as a congresswoman, promoting violence against Republicans and against MAGA, which, of course, we know that even Joe Biden supports that type of rhetoric of calling us extreme MAGA Republicans and really trying to make sure that we fall into this deplorables category. So the name calling, I think, is from the Democrats, against Republicans, I think is pretty nasty.
Yes, and Alice, I want to be fair. If you tried to compile a list of Republicans with bad reputations, I'm sure you could do that. But there's a lot of evidence of Democrats disrespecting staffers. We'll start with the president. Let me just run through this quickly. Joe Biden reportedly yells at White House staffers in profanity-laced confrontations. Kamala Harris' office is reportedly rife with dysfunction, described as a, quote, not healthy work environment. Ex-Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, remember her? She was exposed for deranged emails degrading staffers, which sparked comparisons to Jack Nicholson's character in The Shining. We're close to Halloween. We thought that was appropriate. And that's just a couple examples. So take us through this, Ellis.
Well, Rob, I'm sure you're not arguing, Rob, that the only liberal bosses are bully jerks. I mean, in my experience, they have people like that of all political persuasions. I know Mercedes has worked for some, real bully idiots in her political career. Rob, I bet even in broadcasting, maybe you've met a couple of dopey bosses
Never
who have a
once.
variety of political views. So listen, here's the issue, it seems to me. It's a bad habit, and I hope you're not getting into this, to demonize people that we disagree with, right? I mean, it is perfectly possible for people to have a wide variety of political views and for us not to think they're evil, bad, horrible people. I mean, I don't agree with Mercedes about hardly anything. But she's a nice person. I don't think she hates America. I don't think she wants me to die. So it's a bad habit to think that all the people we disagree with are horrible and all the people who share our views are somehow lovely, decent people. That's just dumb thinking.
Okay. Mercedes, go ahead.
Rob, I'll tell you something. If you're going to go into politics, and I think my colleague will agree with me on this, you better have a tough spine. Like you
exactly.
better to take the hits, because this is an ugly business. It's unfortunately become uglier with time and more divisive. And I actually think we need to find ways to work together on issues, for example, on anti-human trafficking issues, on how we rebuild the economy, on how we are strong on national security. We need to find this common ground on both sides. And guess what? If you're going to go into politics, just be ready, because you better put on the armor of God, because it's tough to get through this business.
I like that, Mercedes. Alice,
That's
just
exactly
quickly,
right.
does this hurt her as she campaigns for mayor of Houston?
Listen, people, she's a well-known, long-time member of Congress, well-known in Houston. It seemed like I didn't hear the tape. Maybe she was a jerk with her staff. I don't know. People are going to judge her based on her long career and who else she's running against, like anybody else in politics gets judged. Just don't be ideological about this. Let's call the jerks jerks, and don't assume that people we disagree with are all evil.
That's not the assumption I'm making. I heard the audio, and we made a conscious decision not to play it for the audience this morning, because it's not even 8 o'clock here in New York. It's just too early in the morning for that. How about this? If she gets elected mayor of Houston, is she going to have a tough time staffing her office, Ellis?
You know, it seems like bully bosses should, but somehow or another, they always seem to find people to work for them. I wouldn't work for her, probably.
All right, Mercedes Ellis, appreciate you being with us, breaking that down.
Good to see you guys.
We'll continue to follow that one as it moves along. Thank you.